What's going on, guys? Jim Surratt, Hammer Strength and Conditioning, coming at you real quick. Been a long time since I made a video, and so I wanted to take the time that I have today before training starts to sort of put some content together and sort of talk about how I'm putting together my training cycle for the next about 6 months leading up to this competition in December. So the competition, funny you should ask, right? The competition that I'm doing is an SPF championship down in Tennessee. It's December, I don't know, the first week of December, first weekend of December. Looking to put some big numbers up, at least for squat and deadlift. Bench is still very low relative to my squat and deadlift numbers, just because of my 2 herniated discs and how they affect my tricep. But bench is coming along, so hopefully we can post something somewhat respectable in the bench. But yes, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I'm putting together my training cycle for this upcoming competition. Obviously, we are still very, very far out, so things are very general right now, which means I can do whatever really I want to do. And as we get closer and closer to meet, so probably like 12 to 16 weeks out, then things start getting more and more specific, right? So I start addressing or identifying things that I need to work on specifically, and then craft a plan to address those specific issues, right? Where we're at right now, again, about 6 months out, things be very generalized, just focusing on getting stronger. That's the main emphasis of what's happening right now. So still doing a 4-day conjugate split. Monday is always a max effort lower day, or day one, wherever that falls within the week. Day one is always a max effort lower week, so either a squat or a deadlift variation. Now, I choose not to do good mornings. I don't feel like they have much of a carryover for me, and they're far more painful than they are beneficial for me personally. I still think there's a lot of value in doing them for either athletes or lifters. But for me personally, I have, sort of like non-specific generalized lower back pain that just bothers me from time to time. And the return on investment or the risk to reward ratio of a good morning is just too lopsided for me to really buy into performing them for any sort of heavy weight, right? So I just don't do it, right? So it's again, max effort lower is gonna be either a squat or a deadlift variation, probably against chains, very rarely against bands anymore. I just don't like doing bands personally. Obviously they work. Like if you've ever watched West Side versus the World, Louis talks about how Chuck Vogelpohl would put more and more and more bands on, and he got stronger and stronger and stronger, right? So obviously they work, right? But at the end of the day, I just don't like them that much. So I just don't do them, right? I like chains better. And obviously the differences between chains and bands, chains are a static load, right? Where bands are, in my opinion, a more dynamic load. So the chains increase incrementally as you stand up, right? Because it's link by link by link. And it's a pretty much standardized increase in weight across the board or across the strength curve as you go from the bottom position to the top position, right? Whereas bands are more dynamic load, and they have a more exponential increase in tension, right? Because the bands are elastic, so they want to return to their natural shape. So they are actively resisting you, right? So, and then there's variables to take in consideration with bands, like how old is the band? How do you have the band set up? Is it brand new? What's the temperature like? All this kind of stuff, right? So, so chains, in my opinion, are just a more reliable and sort of predictable unit of accommodating resistance as compared to bands. I'll probably use bands at some point. I just prefer chains right now, so that's what I'm doing for both squat, bench, and deadlift, right? But then like for variations, we'll do like so today, I don't know if you can see much of it in the background here, but today we're doing duffel bar versus 200 pounds of chain, briefs and sleeves only, right? So I'm spending a lot of time in just my briefs and my sleeves, trying to avoid putting the suit on and wrapping up until I absolutely need to. Obviously at some point as we get closer to the meet, again, that 12 to 16 week mark, there'll be a need to get into the suit to feel the pressure, to feel the weight that is, relative to that suit, or that is movable when wearing the suit, and then the wrap. So understand all the different stimulus, the different variables that go into, a meet day preparation obviously will have to happen. But where I'm at right now, again, that we're very, very far out, so I can just keep things very generalized, very open, and just focus on getting stronger with, a minimal, right, level of support, minimal relative to geared lifting. We're definitely not going raw because there's only one thing that's fun raw, and we all know what that is. But yeah, so day one is max effort lower, squat or deadlift variation. Day two is a repetition effort upper day. So I have stepped away from the traditional max effort, dynamic effort sort of format that Louis talks about a lot that they did at Westside. I just don't feel like it benefits me a whole lot. Like speed work benefits me personally. Again, I still program it. I still think there's value in it. It just comes down to a contextual sort of situational aspect of what that individual lifter needs, right? So I don't feel like I need speed work so much as I need just time under tension and volume, right? Because of what I have going on with my neck, which affects the nerves that go into my tricep. The tricep has atrophied. It's not as powerful. It shuts off early. So I just need more time under tension, more exposure to volume and stimulus to try to account for that, right? So what I've been doing is just a linear progression, 5x5, close grip, flat bench. I started off at 135. Last week I did 220, it's definitely getting hard, right? But the cool thing is that I'm getting stronger every week, right? So every week I'm trying to add 5 or 10 pounds, right? And as I get closer and closer to what a max might be, or to failure, I start adding less and less weight, right? And obviously the smallest increment you can go up is 5 pounds, right? Unless I want to break out like micro plates, which I'm not going to do. But yeah, so 220 for 5x5 was definitely not easy, but I got it done, right? And that's what matters. And then I follow that up with a close grip, not a close grip, excuse me, a reverse grip, descending rep max wave, right? So I started off at a 12 rep max, a 9 rep max, a 6 rep max, and the 11.85, 10.74, 9.63, 8.52, 7.41, right? So eventually I'll work up to a true 1 rep reverse grip max. And again, that's just hitting the tricep from a different angle. I actually feel pretty strong in reverse grip raw. It's a little bit easier for me to press a raw weight with my reverse grip than it is with my standard grip. But in the shirt, it's just not going to work. So I'm going to have to go standard grip with my shirt. Day 3, which is typically a Wednesday, is just off. And then day 4 is my secondary lower, which is where I do my competition style lifts. So again, we're still in just the briefs, whether it's squat or deadlift. And some days it turns into basically a secondary max effort, right? But my opinion is, so the way that I frame this day is that it should be a sub or circummaximal load with high technical proficiency and execution, right? So basically what I'm trying to do is still keep my stimulus very high, right? Not maximally, right? An optimal sort of level of stimulus, but focus on technical efficiency, execution, and proficiency under that circummaximal load, right? So basically it's like a competition style day where I'm like trying to like do everything as perfectly as I can, right? So like last week, I squatted 905 in my briefs and my sleeves. Definitely was not perfect, right? But where I'm trying to go with this is that, like, yes, there are going to be days where it's like, hey, I'm going to shut it down early because that was a technically efficient or proficient or highly executed set. And I know that if I go up, like, it's going to turn into shit, right? So I'm going to stop now. Other days it's like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling good. Like the iron's hot or the fire's hot, so let's strike, right? So, and that was what happened on last week. Last Thursday was that I was feeling good. I knew that I wanted to hit 905 because I've done 900 in my briefs and my sleeves, and I wanted to set a PR, so I did it. And it wasn't pretty, but I did it, which is boding really well for forecasting potential numbers in the future. So the way that secondary lower day works is that it's always the opposite of what the max effort lower day is. So like if I squat on day 1, I'll deadlift on day 4. If I deadlift on day 1, I'm going to squat on day 4, right? So it's always competition style. It's always the opposite. So you're always keeping a high level of stimulus across the system, but you're still practicing both movements, right, across a week, right? But one day is dedicated to variation, which is supposed to be ideally addressing weak points or exposing weak points, which you then, address with your secondary and your accessories, which I don't do. Don't tell anybody. Right, and then your secondary day is your competition style technical execution. Excuse me. And then day 5, which is usually a Friday, is my max effort upper day. Max effort upper. Been spending a lot of time in my shirt. I have an Inzer triple ply shirt that I got from eBay. Great shirt, fits perfectly, very comfortable. Pressed 405 the other day from a touch to a lockout. It was slow as shit. But again, that's because my left tricep doesn't like to fire off the way that it used to, right? I have chronic numbness throughout my arm, like my thumb and my index finger, and sometimes my middle finger are chronically numb. And the tricep obviously still functions, but there's just no power output, right? But it's definitely gotten a lot better because when this first happened, whenever the injury occurred, I couldn't do a push-up. I couldn't do a band tricep with a red mini band. I couldn't do a push down without it going like this, with this arm lagging behind very significantly. So to be able to press 405 with the pause, I mean, it wasn't like super strict and it wasn't pretty, but I got it done, right? Which means we're moving in the right direction. So yeah, it's my split right now, and really feeling very good about where we're at. Obviously, we have a long way to go, and I might be like, I'm probably peaked, quote unquote, too early, right? But, you know, I mean, yeah, 6 months out is not the time to peak, right? But basically what I can do is sort of step back a few steps and then move forward again. Because at some point, like the secondary lower day is going to stall out, right? I'm not going to be able to just keep squatting, you know, 30, 40, 50 pound jumps every single couple weeks, right? But the idea is to push it as far as we can, and then we start coming up with a different plan, right? So yeah, that's it. Pink polo, I don't have them on right now, but pink chucks. The pink is really, I had somebody ask me about it the other day. The pink is really just my way of trying to piss people off, right? Because powerlifters are so serious, we're so like focused and dialed in, and everything's so like, so much gravity around what we do, right? That people are like, why are you wearing pink? And at this point, it's just to piss people off. So if you see me rocking a bright neon pink polo, bright neon pink knee wraps, and bright neon pink chucks in December down in Tennessee, know that it is intentional and I'm trying to make you angry. So, and if it works, even better. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in, checking things out. As always, don't waste the pain.